All right. Looks like we've gone live. Sal Trucker here. It's the end of another week. It's Friday. This may be the last stream I'm doing like this for a while, or I may be able to do a few more. I saw my doctor yesterday, and I don't think I got out for a stream. I did get out for I did some working out. I posted a video of myself working out. I didn't get a lot done. I did a little bit of lifting, try and push my body and get some strength back. I'll be taking a bit of a break today. I'll probably do some treadmill walking, and I'm gonna go down to the yard and talk to the boss and see if I can get on the schedule for next week. I talked to them earlier this week, and they said they're busy enough to get me back in the truck, no problem. So I'm gonna go tidy up the truck, clean the windows, give it a vacuum, wash it down if it's dirty. Been rained on a few times, I'm sure. But yeah, it's nice to freshen it up, get everything clean, and be ready to go. Hopefully, you can get me in the truck early next week. But I'm gonna try to get back to work. I feel still very winded at times, but I think if they can give me some less intensive work to do, I might be all right with it. We'll see how it goes. See what they can come up with for me. So that's where I'm at today. I'm not going to play any intro music today. I'm just going to get right at it. I think it's 8:24 a.m. on the eastern side of North America here, Eastern time. I always forget which one's standard and daylight. I think that's changing soon. I can't remember. We changed it here. I think in Europe they changed last weekend. I could be wrong. So, got a few things to talk about as I get back at it. But mainly, I'm just looking forward to getting back to some normalcy. Although my sleep patterns have been pretty fucked up, I'm going to have to work on that. Although I woke up pretty early today. So hopefully I can keep shifting myself into waking up early, going to bed earlier. And I have been working at going to bed fairly early this week. I'll keep on doing that. But I've been waking up in the middle of the night and feeling out of sorts. And I've been drinking too much caffeine during the day. So going to have to change that up. Regardless, I'm going to get into a couple of conversations that I want to have about the way people think and the way they come up with their opinions on things. And oftentimes this is going to go into politics and policy making. And I was going to talk a little bit about the fact that there's an election coming up in the U.S. and there's pending elections in Canada. There's already some provincial elections in the works. There's a federal election looming because of lack of confidence in the prime minister here. The American presidential race is on the lips of everybody I talk to these days, including I loaded up a short, and then while I was loading it up, a bunch of shorts played. And one of them it was interesting. There was a waitress talking about how a couple she was serving presumed that she would be pro-Trump just because of this thing he's promised about not taxing tips, which is a whole nother conversation. I'm not going to go down the specific road there about the tip culture in North America. I personally think paying people a living wage just right off the hop would be like a really good way to go. And people that work in the service industry, if they go above and beyond, getting a cash tip here and there seems reasonable. Paying them like a third of minimum wage and assuming they'll make it in tips, that's fucked up. So yeah, sorry, food service industry. I think you got it wrong. I think you've had it wrong for a long ass time. How did I come to that conclusion? Because like if you work a day and you put a good effort in, you usually get paid for it. That's the way it should be. People that don't want to pay for good work, you're wrong. Now, there's a problem with the economy in general in that, and people have heard me talk about this before, is where does the money come from? Well, the money comes from the people. The people earn the money and they pay the money into the system, and the people at the top are trying to collect it all. They're trying to have the biggest funnel collecting the most money. It's kind of a weird, fucked up thing. But we all work in various industries, and the money sort of gets cycled around. I guess it's supposed to go around in circles or something. Is economics complicated? Fuck yeah, it's complicated. I mean, it shouldn't be though, right? You wake up in the morning, you go do your job, they pay you a paycheck at the end of the week, the end of 2 weeks, whatever you happen to have. Some people might get paid by the day. It really doesn't matter. You do a good job, you get paid, and you buy the things you need and some of the things you want. Right about now, I know I've said this and had people come at other people. Nobody's come straight at me to say that it's like a really fucking crazy thing to want to be able to afford food, shelter, and education for your children. Say, but food and shelter and like clothing, basic fucking needs, like trying to put that together at whatever the going rate is, that's fucked up. And I've talked to a lot of people in a lot of places, and they're all finding the cost of food in particular to be insane. The cost of energy is insane. And when I woke up early this morning, there wasn't normal stuff to do because there might be people out there streaming and stuff, but they're not people that I hang out with. So I didn't know what to watch. So I there was a Discord channel that I hang out at, the Globe Gangsters, and it was the people from like Australia and Europe were up and chatting because it was their time of day to be doing that. So I've run into them before in the morning. I didn't get on and talk because my family was all sleeping. I like to give them a chance to sleep till a normal time so they're ready to go for the day. So as it happened, there was a gentleman in there, I think his name is Rick, who was talking about what he thinks about the world. And I realized in listening to everything he had to say that he'd come to the conclusion that everything being done by certain entities is wrong, and everything, he didn't necessarily say this, but like he trusts some places way more than others. He wasn't really using what I would call like good critical thinking skills. He was and I don't want to prejudice people, but this is a person who believes the earth is flat. This is a person who believes that the government is hiding things from us and that you can't trust them. And I was thinking about what they were saying, and they were being engaged with by another gentleman who was using slightly better critical thinking skills. Although I found myself not agreeing with both of them at certain points. The bottom line is we should not, just as a general rule, just assume that everybody's telling us the truth, nor should we assume everyone is lying. This particular gentleman was very upset with the science industry. And because I have a great deal of interest in science and physics in particular, I thought it was something interesting and something I should think about a little bit, um, about like why it is that people distrust what goes on in the science industry. People are not happy with things that scientists do. And I think that's because there have been occasions, more than once, where scientists have done something shitty. And I would say when they do something shitty, they've ceased to be scientists who are actually out for inquiry in the scientific realm. And I'd like to beseech people now, if you're doing something like that, please stop. Please stop and take a look at what you got into and why you got into it. And if it was to get fame and money, you're probably in it for the wrong reasons. But if you're in it to make a decent living and do a good job, and you happen to somehow get fame and money, that might happen to you. You may get great accolades and stuff, but if you just work hard and do a good job, you should be treated with the utmost respect. And I think that's one of the things that we've learned to disrespect an entire industry because some people have abused it. And that abuse is then being abused by those that seek to shut down knowledge and shut down scientific inquiry. And one of the things that's galling and one of the things that people laugh at and point out often is that scientific inquiry has brought us to the point where not only can someone like myself that believes in scientific inquiry talk to you over the airwaves, so to speak, which is, over the internet. This is my signal goes through a fiber optic line and then goes to some sort of telecommunications center and is beamed out around the world. And I would presume that's done by a number of different methods. I don't know the chain that it goes through in my specific case. I know I know which company I buy my internet from, and I know that they get hooked into the system. But telephone lines, underwater cables, satellite communications, all of these things are used. Cell phone communications, they're all used for telecommunications, and all of those things are in our hands, using the power that's already in nature, harnessing it, and manipulating it with the power of human inquiry and technology development. That's standing on the shoulders of many, many giants, as has commonly been referred to. And that's one thing most scientists really appreciate is the fact that they're learning something and adding on to what other people already know. So when somebody says, "Hey, I don't trust this because it came from place A," well, let's take a look at what that is, and let's take a look at why that is. So one of the arguments that's made is you can't trust anything that comes out of Russia or China, and the reason you can't trust it is because they're communist countries. Well, Russia technically isn't a communist country, but it was for a long time. And people forget that it's switched to a quote unquote democracy, where anybody that runs against the current president somehow ends up having a very rough time staying alive. It's a little bit funny, right? But that having been said, you know, we say in our media, well, their media is lying to their people. Is our media lying to us? Well, quite likely they are, and quite likely there's manipulation of the facts coming from journalists around the world. And I would say that using the word journalist is offensive to journalists. But journalism is something that I think we all know is prone to mistake, it's prone to hyperbole, and it's prone to manipulation. And one of the things that people complain about is the fact that large corporate interest and large money people, individuals, control big swaths of media. Media companies get bought up at huge rates. I was reading an article the other day about how a bunch of newspaper companies have been bought up by venture capitalists and basically hollowed out. And they make money by taking something that has some existing value. The value is in the quality of the people that are there, and then they throw in all the people because they cost money, because the workforce costs money. And I've often joked that even though big corporate giants and their CEOs are looking at AI and robots and things to do our jobs and take away jobs from the workforce and put people out of work, the easiest thing to program is to write a computer program that just fires a certain number of people when the stock price drops below a certain number, because that seems to be their knee-jerk reaction. Now, is that a fair statement? No, not all companies do that. Other companies look at other ways of saving and innovating. But a lot of times, the only thing you can do is lay people off en masse, because if not enough people are buying your product, you will not have enough income to pay them. And it's probably more responsible to do that in the long run. I always hated when I was in business to have things like that. Although, because I worked in a project type industry, people knew that at the end of a project, they might not be needed for a second project, or it might have been like a regional thing. Really, it's not as big of a deal to just say, "Hey, this is over," and hopefully we'll work again sometime. But in day-to-day work, if you have a regular job and you're sort of planning to work there for 30 years, people used to do that. They used to go in, they went in the door, and they came out the other end. Gold watch and a pat on the back, and enjoy your sunny days for 5 or 6 years, and then you die. That doesn't happen as much anymore. Some people live longer than they ever worked at a company with a pension and stuff. Lots of people work without a pension. These are the sorts of things we have to think about as we go through our lives. We have to spend a lot of time thinking about how this all goes. Hello, top tester. Good to see you. I am doing well. I'm planning to start going back to work next week, and I'm gonna get cleaned up and go in this afternoon and clean up my truck and get it ready to go, and talk to my bosses about getting on the roster for next week. Like, probably when I finish my show, I'll call them up and I'll head down there and get some stuff done. And I brought my toolbox home so I could, or I have a little tool bag. I was going to organize it, clean it out. I brought it home to get it organized here, make sure I have everything I need. I brought my GPS home and updated it because I went down there earlier this week. So I'm talking about that, but I was just talking about why does the people have certain opinions? Why do they trust one thing and not another? And my experience has been, and this is something that Angela Collier did a program on this. So I'll try to find and link in a community post or something like that. It's worth a look. She mentioned a specific sort of thing that happens where people can become aware of something where like they know what happened in something and they hear the way the media reports it and they know it's not quite accurate, or like they've got something right but they've got a lot of things wrong and they know what's really going on, but then they forget that when they're reporting about something they don't know about. So I've had situations like this happen where I happen to be very close to a newsworthy event, and I hear the way the media reports it. Like I've called in a couple of fires in my neighborhood, for instance, and they were mostly reported accurately. But I think of another case where there was some criminal activity going on that I witnessed some of, and it was reported in the local news. And they had, if there were 10 details to report on, they had 8 of them wrong. And they just said whatever they thought at the time. They talk before they know anything, because it's better to have something on the air than nothing, almost, I think. And so when I heard that, I was like, do these people ever get anything right? So you have to wonder, are you getting the true story from the media? So I understand that distrust, but I don't want to sow distrust in all the media. I want to be able to trust journalism, but I also don't want us to think that just because I live in Canada, or like people live in the USA, they might live in Mexico, they might live in Central America, they might live in South America, Africa, they might live in Europe or Asia or Oceania, Australia, sort of those types of places, and all the little places around them. They're all divided into all sorts of different countries. And I think we forget how widely varied the world is in terms of the way people think. And despite the fact that we all, I keep encouraging empathy and understanding that people are more the same than they are different. That's a very important thing to remember. But we all want to be able to trust that we live in a place where we feel secure. And we may not realize that some people live in a place where they know they're not secure, like they absolutely know they're not secure. There are people right now today living in war zones. There are people living in war zones that are being warred upon by official government entities, and there are people being warred upon by just gang warfare. Just people with guns and power are taking over. They control everything that goes on, and they control it by force. And that sort of thing happens around the world at times. And in what we might call more Western style societies, we tend to crack down on this to some degree, but we also tend to just let it happen, because if the people that are in charge of what is let to happen are in charge of the criminal acts or the gang warfare, they may just let it go by. How can we trust them? Well, the thing is, we have to just have a little bit of trust in the people that we elect and the people that are running things like law enforcement and the judicial systems that we have. And we are told constantly about the others in the other places and how terrible it is there. And I can only think that, yeah, some of those places sound pretty terrible. Some of them are probably okay. And this is one of the things where we hear people fearmonger all the time about what will happen if you let this happen, if you let that happen. One of the most common things I hear out of American politics is the worry about socialism and communism and about how terrible that will be. It's a funny thing that goes on, and I don't love politics because it kind of is a downer, but I do like to point out to people that pooling resources, this is what socialism is about. Is that you work for enough money to hopefully live your life comfortably, and you pay some money in taxes. And the taxes are collected by the government, and they shouldn't be used the way kings collected taxes to just increase their wealth. They should be used to better society. And there's this idea in politics often that good politics, good country running, good government running at a state or provincial level or at a city or town or village level, that's done by running it like a business. And I like to point out that it's the thing least like what they should run it by. They should run it as a break even. Businesses should be run for profit because that's what they're in business for, to turn a profit. Mainly, I would think that the profit would be good is the profit would be earned and kept by um, the leaders of the company, the owner and the founders of companies should be able to make a decent living doing that, maybe even better than a decent living. We seem to have this sort of like really lopsided view of it now, or maybe we've allowed things to get out of control. So we have a very small number of people controlling a lot of businesses and collecting a lot of money. And we complain about that. Like they seem to be like the kings now, right? But it's a little bit more complex than that because we work in a world where business is done worldwide, and people that have really great ideas will get enough money that they can start to control other things. And capitalism is supposed to encourage competition, and we're supposed to have government regulations against monopolies and monopolizing things. But we keep tending towards smaller and smaller groups of companies controlling more and more resources, and that feels wrong. It feels like that's not the way it should be. And instead of people complaining about that, I hear people complaining about this one world government idea. And I guess the thing is, what a one world government looks like to you is probably depends on where you're at. Like for instance, if you're if you're in a Western country where some of your needs are met most of the time, and you don't feel like you're at your wits' end just trying to stay alive, like literally avoid being killed, you have time to think about, well, I wish I didn't have to pay so much in taxes, or I wish I could live in a nicer home, or I wish it wasn't so much for cheese. Um, that's kind of what people would call a privileged position, and it's something we should be aware of. But just because our problems aren't life and death in the same way, in the long run they will be. And someone who's living in a place like that may say, you know what, I really wish the government of another country would come in and instill whatever rules they have that stop people from shooting each other just for existing in the competition for resources. I'm sure we wouldn't have to go back too far in history to find the competition for resources at the end of a gun, a sword, a stick, a rock, whatever. It was a pretty commonplace thing. It sucks, right? We live in a pretty complex world. We could probably make it better. And I hear people worried about immigration. They're worried about people coming from those other places. They're really upset about it. Um, I'm not. I'm not upset about it. I would like people to come from places where they are in peril. If we have some sort of safe harbor for them, I would love to provide them a place to be. I don't have the personal resources to house them all, but I pay plenty of my paycheck goes into taxes. And I'm sure that governments around the world collect enough in taxes to help with stuff like this. And if people live in a corrupt society, they may not have access to stuff like that. At the same time, you can live in a partially corrupt society and things could be kind of okay, but you don't have to trust everything that everybody says. And life's more complicated than that. Life is it's far more dynamic than that. There are some good people, there are some bad people. The vast majority of us are just good people trying to make a living, trying to live our lives. And I do hope that people will recall that they are much more by happenstance than anything else. Living in a place where things are okay. Chances are, if you're able to spend any of your day watching me, you're in a place of far greater security than some. There are there are current wars being fought all the time over very scarce resources in many places, and the ones that make the news um, are typically ones that are bigger skirmishes, bigger things, and other things just sort of they get brought up every once in a while. You know, my kids were learning about um, some countries in the north parts of Africa where commonly people are killed just for nothing, just for existing. They they indoctrinate young children to shoot people in other villages, just to take whatever small bit of resources they have, access to water, access to food, access to anything. They terribly treat people, um, and men are just forced into these war camps. Little boys and girls are forced into it, mostly little boys, and they still have, I guess, a misogynistic attitude to things, which means that women are treated like property and men are treated as disposable. It's a pretty fucked up way to look at things, but you know, if you look at some of the things that religions preach, a lot of the good natured stuff, the precursor in Abrahamic religions is a mixture of things. There's some good stuff in there, and there's some really heinous stuff in there about what to do with people from their neighboring village, your neighboring sect or group or culture, whatever it would be. Top, what did you say? Amazon's company gets called out a lot. Most people don't realize the amount of prosperity that comes with a large company like Amazon. Yeah, so yeah, the fact that Bezos makes a lot of money also means lots of other people are making money. So Amazon it's easy to like freak out about Amazon and call them out, but I think the main thing that people are complaining about is that they now have what seems to be a monopoly on things. And that's because Amazon kept building up this thing that people didn't really understand. I remember when they first started Amazon, it sounded like it was just going to be like an online bookstore, and people were like, an online bookstore? Who the fuck needs that? Well, apparently a lot of people. I order stuff from Amazon from time to time. Not a lot of stuff, but it's very handy. When I did my video yesterday, I realized I'd ordered off of Amazon the weight locks I have to keep the weight plates on. They're quick and easy. They snap on, they snap off, and they have a little lock on them. They're way easier to use than the springs, and they don't wear down like the springs or slide like the springs do, because the spring ones they don't bind on as tight. The ones I bought are they don't wear out is the same way, and they have a positive locking mechanism. They don't slide around. And that's worth something to me. Now, I'm going to change gears just a little bit here. What else Top is saying here? They revamped the entire road system to bring a new plant near you. They hire hundreds of people, generating a large amount of taxes for the area. Yeah. No, and that's really good, Top. Now, what I complain about is when one government pays a company like Amazon to be there, they pay them in taxes. That pisses me off. It pisses me off because they're bribing. Like, governments are competing with each other to bribe a company to locate in their area. And I think the worst thing anyone can do is make their area into a one business town. That is a devastating thing to do, because then that company controls everything and everyone. People should build dynamic communities, and government should encourage it. I think big cities are often very successful because they have so many people there. There's such a large customer base that multiple companies will locate there. But there's also a need for people to live and work in rural and suburban areas. And suburban areas, oftentimes people complain about them. They're because they've run out of room in the cities. City like the city I grew up in, which is Toronto, there's a lot more vertical development than there ever was when I was a young man, or even when I was a kid. And the development that was the vertical development when I was younger, when I was in construction, which wasn't that long ago, but like when I did a lot of work in downtown Toronto, there was a lot of vertical development to put in places for corporate offices and stuff. But it switched over to building a lot more stack development for housing. So a lot more people live in the city core. But with that came a need for public transit that had not been built on for a long time. Um, the public transit system in Toronto was not well thought out. It was okay when they first built it. It was first thought of, I think, in the early days of the city, which would have been the mid 1800s. There wasn't a lot of thought for anything because it was all horse transport. In fact, it was called Muddy York because the roads were full of rutted, muddy streets. And it became Toronto after a number of years. There's actually a bunch of different little villages sort of got melded together. People forget there were suburbs even back then. And the sprawling suburbs ended up becoming swallowed up by the big city. They called it the mega city in the 90s when the provincial government actually just sort of told there was like 5 cities that made up Toronto. And they just said, no, you're one big city now. And people push back against it, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know. It doesn't make sense to repeat certain things though in governments. And what they did was they took the city halls that were there and made them into something useful, like localized government offices. West Virginia's trying to meddle in local school curriculum in the town next to you. Well, Top, you see, this is the thing, right? It's very difficult to have government without having meddling. and the people that like what's going on will not call it meddling, and the people that hate what's going on will call it meddling. And this is kind of where I started my conversation with, and I realize this is not a time I'm usually on, and I think other people are doing bigger, better shows. I just thought maybe the best thing for me to do is just kind of show up and do something before I get myself ready to start facing the day, which is right in front of me. I gotta like roll up my sleeves and get back at it. It feels a little bit anxiety inducing to change gears again. I'm gonna do it though. So what I've decided to talk about today was just about like information. Like, where do we get our information? Is it right? Is it wrong? And are we skeptical about the right things? Or are we just skeptical in general? And this all came out of listening to this gentleman who just thinks everybody's out to get him except for maybe his church, I guess. He seemed to have some religious conviction. Flat earth, religious flat earther who believes that we'd all be better off if we went back to biblical times. And you know what? If we all just took like the cherry picked Bible and just treated everybody the way people think Jesus treated people, with being kind to your neighbor and all that kind of stuff, maybe we'd be doing all right. But we have this divide and anger kind of mentality, and that's, I think, in politics, because we have such a big political conversation going on. We talk about politics all the time. Like, these policies have to be dealt with all the time. And we need good leadership. We need a good steady hand guiding things. And what we seem to have is a bunch of people yelling at each other and saying, you're on this side and you're on that side. And like I say, I watched this video where this woman was describing this couple that's like, well, you're obviously going to vote for Trump because you're a waitress and because he's going to solve your tip problem. She said something crazy. She said, I don't mind paying a reasonable amount of taxes and get something back for them. Like, my taxes go into healthcare. They go into education for young children up to grade 12, which would be about 17, 18 years old. I think we should expand that. I think we should really look at trying to educate more people with government funds. We could do it efficiently if we did it across the board, and we could ensure that we have more well-trained people in more in-demand things, and people want to do a good job. I think that's the thing is people want to get an education if they can. If someone is well suited to a job and has a passion for it and can get the education and it doesn't bankrupt them in the process, they're going to go far. And it's not a bad thing. And people pushing back against education, I don't know what it is they're trying to accomplish exactly, other than literally try to dumb us back into the Bronze Age. Not because the people are dumb, but because with ignorance comes a lack of understanding of what's going on. And the more you know, the more you can know. Like a lot of learning is how to learn, how to assess what's going on. And I know it's funny for a truck driver to say this because I don't have a lot of formal education, but I still respect it. I respect formal education and also respect the fact that people that work in the industries that I've worked in do get educations. They may not be the ones that people think of when they think of like Ivy League universities and stuff, but people that learn trades, the people I worked with in construction, they spend a lot of time learning their trades. It takes the ones that are certified in the top trades are people that have spent time going to a college level course set. They've learned skills in school and they've practiced them on the job in an apprenticeship. And then they've gone back to study and write tests and show that they have a great deal of knowledge. And some people may be aware of this. So some of the trades where you need certifications in my country are being an electrician, being a plumber, being a pipe fitter, being a welder. Those ones may resonate with people. There's ones that are less regulated, but they should still be regulated. Things like being a carpenter, being a mason. There are unions that will help with training and stuff and give certifications, but a lot of those jobs you can technically work in without being penalized. There is what they call a college of trades in my province, where some of those other things you have to show that you're certified or that you're working with a certified person to get your apprenticeship, and you have to be registered with them even for that. Which is a good thing. You should be checking stuff out like this. The same thing with being a truck driver. It requires a certain amount of education in my province and my country in general. Hey, Sumami, good to see you. Bink bonk. Bink bonk. I don't know how to pronounce that exactly, but bink bonk seems right. So as I pontificate here about the way things ought to be, I really do think that we would be better off as a society in general, worldwide, if we worked on making things not necessarily more equal, not more even, like because that makes people think, okay, no, like that's communism. That's where like everybody makes the same amount of money, everybody gets the same thing. Because when everybody's the same thing, everybody gets shit. That seems to be the way it works, right? When we talk about communism and we talk about scaring people about it, we're like, well, if we spread all the resources equally and evenly and equitably, you know what would happen? Everybody would just get a shit situation. Yeah, everybody making the same amount doesn't mean it's easy. No, and you know what? It's I guess what I wonder about is like how much better would society be if everybody had a chance to. No, they're not synonymous at all, Sumami. And I'm not trying to make them that way. I'm trying to point out that there's a lot of fear about things like that, even though they exist everywhere, even in countries that pride themselves on not being socialist. Socialism exists. It's just like what level do you take it to? But I think we would benefit as a society in general if worldwide we pushed the idea that people should be as educated as possible. And the people that are conspiracy theorists, the people that are conspiracy minded, will say, well, they're just going to teach you all the wrong shit. They're gonna indoctrinate you. They're gonna brainwash you, all that type of thing. And I was listening to a gentleman talk about this morning who was a flat earther. They weren't talking about flat earth. They were just talking about how you can't trust certain things like media. You can't trust media and government, basically. And that basically this person, anything from establishment was a conspiracy, and anything from religion was what the truth is. And so they were putting down science and all sorts of stuff. Marxism is stupidity. I do not want a fucking worker state. I want everybody to have compulsory education, adequate, but also public health care and ability to own capital and property. Fuck the bullshit. Hey, Tsunami, that's kind of what I'm not. I don't think I'm advocating Marxism, but we can talk about that. And Top saying I'm kind of split on unions. Well, here's the thing. I'm a little bit iffy on unions too, although I like them more now. as a person that's just a worker. When I was in business, I didn't have a problem with unions, but I knew if they tried to unionize my small company, I would just hand over the keys and say, like, we're bankrupt in 2 weeks. Enjoy yourselves. Because the people I had working there wouldn't be able to make union wages. That just wasn't a thing. Because the vast majority of us were in management. Like, there's just no way to unionize us. But there might be ways to help, in what would be better is if small companies like that could have access to like a union for small companies where they could get access to benefits and stuff like that. And if their wages could be negotiated to the point where I could charge their wages no matter what, and I didn't have to compete for work when I was in construction, that would be fine. But when I was competing for work, I had to use a mix of labor types. I don't want everybody stuck as a worker. I don't want a small percentage of assholes only a majority of wealth either. Yeah. See, this is Sumami. This is the problem. This is the problem, and I think maybe the problem is you'd have to keep moving things in a certain direction in order to make them work well. Top tester, I'm a fan of meritocracy, but the thought of leaving people in society behind is unconscionable. And then Sumami says, I just want everyone to live happily and be able to actually own things. There's always going to be some greedy fuck that wants to rule over other people and hoard wealth. Yeah, and see, this is the problem. And the greedy fucks seem to just keep on getting people to think they're great. And it's I don't love being political, but it's hard to not see someone like Trump as being like just an absolute like fucking piece of shit that just he wants the power for the sake of the power. He's an old man. He could easily just sit there, enjoy himself, hire someone to take him out on the water in a boat, hire somebody to do this, hire someone to do that, but instead he just wants to fuck with shit because he likes being in power. Is there benefit to that? Abso-fucking-lutely. There's always a benefit to that. And yeah, unions are necessary, extremely necessary. Well, and Sumami, that's the thing, is without organized labor to push back, capitalism would allow large corporations to fuck everyone over. They already do. And the pushing out of unions is actually a bad thing. What if the greedy fuck is the union organizer? Well, there you go. See, that's the problem, Top. This is the problem, is that you can have greedy fucks anywhere, and you can have corrupt people anywhere. And when unions get huge and start running themselves like businesses, then that's a problem too, right? Like which capitalist organization is the one you want to be worried about, right? And I've been involved in work of both kinds. I currently work in a non-union job, for the record. Hey, Brainless, good to see you. Good to see you. I'm doing a morning show. This may be my last morning show for a while. You never know. Not just to keep wages stable and decent, but also for safety standards. Yeah, absolutely, Sumami. Dude, this is the thing is, unions when they first came in, were coming in because people were just dying left, right, and center. And union leaders can be dick, because a dick can be anywhere, right? You can have people that are shitty just about anywhere. Absolutely. You cannot just say, okay, and this is the whole thing, is like, what I was starting with was about like, who do you believe when they're telling you a story? It's, you can't believe anybody 100%. You have to be skeptical. You have to check and verify. And this person was basically saying, if it comes from a scientist, if it comes from like Russia, if it comes from China, if it comes from here and there, you can't trust it. But it's okay if it's from my church. It's okay if it's from my religion. It's okay if it's from this, that, and the other thing. And if it's, if someone tells me the earth is flat, I believe that, even though I can check and make sure it isn't. It's a fucked up mentality. What do you do with somebody like that? What do you do with somebody who's like, I have no critical thinking skills when it comes to some things that I can obviously check for myself, but I have nothing but critical thinking skills, to the point of not believing the truth when the truth is right fucking in front of me. Skepticism is important. We shouldn't just believe everything we hear, especially not in the days of modern internet communication. But I do think we should question, why do we believe the things we do? And where do we get our sense of trust? Also, since I've got a few more people here, could anybody comment on whether my audio is coming out okay? Because I'm getting my audio meter, which is really shitty on this thing, is not telling me a lot. It looks like it may be going like really low. It's fine. Okay, that's good to hear. Thank you, Smami. Yeah, before it was showing me like more activity, and now it seems to be flatlining. But it could be just because it's a shitty meter. It's just like 10 dots or 8 dots at the bottom of the screen. And sometimes none of them are lighting up. So it makes me think maybe there's no sound going through. So, I think I'm going to try to wrap this up soon. Maybe I'll do another 10 minutes. Is there anything anybody wants me to talk about that they think they need to know Al Trucker's opinion on? So I can go on about it for 10 minutes and then wrap up the show. It's, I've been pontificating a long ass time here about things that worry me and bother me. And rather than try to argue with a flurf on the internet, I'd rather just tell them why they're wrong here and let them find me. How was my Halloween? It was good. It was good. My son had a good time. He went out and checked it out. And my daughter had some friends over and we had a good time. And my wife took my son out. I stayed to supervise the SKK Stadium. And I hope your Halloween was good, Brainless. Did I ever see the video of the Soviet Stadium collapse a few years ago in 2020 as the SKK Stadium? I did not, Sumami. I might have seen it like on the news, but the weird thing about me is despite the fact that I seem to know about politics a little bit, I do not watch the news as often as possible. I find it depresses me. But it was built in the Soviet period. They were allegedly replacing it and caused the most insane collapse I've ever seen other than the Twin Towers. Yeah, so yeah, and the Twin Towers is like a fuck of a thing. I won't go down that rabbit hole because there's another place where skeptics and conspiracy theorists jump in with all sorts of claims. I did talk about it, and so there were some people posting about how that would work, and I posted a couple of comments about it recently. I just don't remember if it was on here or if it was in a Discord chat. He's cutting some shit. The entire thing collapsed. So, Sumami, this is the thing that like you can get this sort of domino effect in construction, especially things that are stacked on top of each other. It doesn't take much to overwhelm a system that was built to be, I'll call it a mostly rigid structure sitting in the ground or on the ground. Is meant to sway with the wind a little bit. It's meant to shake around with earthquakes if it's in such an area. It's meant to hop up and down with frost a little bit, but mostly be buried enough to not do that. But kind of like Jenga, you take a block from the bottom and put it on top. If you take a block out of the middle and it's the wrong block, the thing's going to either topple and I think this is what sort of happened with the Twin Towers in particular, was that like a section was taken out in the middle, and then as it was weakened to the point that it could collapse, as soon as it started to move down, the whole thing just keeps crashing down. Now there are, and this is an interesting thing to watch for me. So other people may or may not find it interesting, but if you just type in that you want to see like controlled demolition, you can see buildings brought down by planned demolition where they'll put in like basically explosive charges in certain places, and if you knock them out in the right place, the building will just like fall down, and then they just go in and scoop up all the pieces. And then there's other types of controlled demolition where they don't use explosives as much, but they chip away at it with like excavators and stuff with what they call a hoe ram is the colloquial term, but basically a jackhammer that's hydraulically actuated from the arm on a excavator type machine. They're usually specially built for demolition, but they look a lot like an excavator because they're basically the chassis of one. It's really pretty good actually. And yes, Brainless, you're right. Demolition is a complete science of its own. It is doing controlled demolition. The engineering involved in building, construction, and in demolition. There are some things that are pretty simple, and there are things that are not. And having worked in construction for nearly 3 decades full time, and I worked in it part time prior to that for a number of years, I witnessed a number of things go right. Unfortunately, a few things go wrong, but sometimes when you see something go wrong in person, you know how to not let it happen again. Mostly things were good, because I mostly worked with competent people, and sometimes a mistake was made. Nothing that was disastrous, but sometimes shit happens. What are you gonna do? So anyway, the um, the bottom line is this. This is this is important to me on this front, is that if you don't have people building things and tearing them down with proper knowledge and education, and the guy swinging the hammer doesn't have to be an engineer, but the guy telling him where to swing it does, or have that information at hand. And oftentimes I was the guy saying, okay, if we're going to get this done, we have to go here, here, and here. This has to happen, and then this is happening. But I didn't do that type of demolition where I took down a building like that all at once. Although I did knock down a few buildings, we used much smaller buildings were taken down, because the buildings that I built and tore down were smaller scale. The ones that I worked in to fit them out were larger scale. So I worked in towers like downtown office towers, things along the lines of the Twin Towers. They weren't quite as big, but they're very, very similar style of construction. There's lots of them still standing all around the world. It's very common setup. The particular size of those two towers was extreme at the time of their building. Um, and yeah, so stadiums by and large are huge concrete buildings, and sometimes they'll involve, if they're Soviet era. I mean, that really just means it was earlier than the late '80s. It could mean that they were even earlier than that. But buildings for a long time, and the Soviets may not have had access to the types of modern construction materials that are available in more Western countries, especially like they may now, but they may not have then. A lot of the building techniques that I see used in um, what I'll call like former Soviet countries, when I see the buildings they have, they do seem to be like an older style of construction by and large. So they're more concrete, more brick. And stadium construction in particular is a weird thing. Stadiums have been poorly built all around the world, the modern Western worlds and otherwise. And one of the reasons I think for that is that they're seen as these big cash cows, and I think I'm not making specific accusations, but I know that in many cities, organized crime takes over construction, and yeah, idiot plans to alter it, Sumami. That often is a problem. But I think what tends to happen is um, buildings like stadiums end up being a whole lot of concrete to build what often looks a bit like a bowl, and they often get called a bowl, right? Um, so they build these places, and they also try to put roofs on them and stuff, right? Um, and they put a lot of weight and bear it on certain pieces to hold it up, and if it's not properly done, it's really prone to falling apart. And these buildings, especially the ones that are exposed to the elements on all sides, they can end up looking a lot like parking structures after like 10 years, and they have a lot of stuff. Yes, howdy DC, good to see you. You can say howdy hell. Yes, hell DC, welcome to hell. We're just talking about building collapses. um so, well, this will DC and I somehow got to get DC to come on with me and talk TikTok tunnel lady. The murder made the final cut and died. Wouldn't have heard the sounds of stress. Yeah, no, you know what? Sumami, they might have known something was wrong, or they might have been used to it. Because sometimes you hear that creaking. I don't know what any time is, DC, but we should come up with it soon. DC has just finished last night. After the, yeah, you send me a message on DC, DC from DC, and we'll come up with a plan because I'm trying to go back to work next week. I have to watch the video. Okay, I will watch the video. I will watch the video. The reason I'm saying that is sometimes you will hear things on a construction site all the time. Doesn't look real. Okay. It may not be. I don't know. And there are cases of corruption where um they go out of their way to make an insurance claim, if you will. Um, you see and hear about it with fires, explosions, collapses. And I think people wonder, and sometimes they can prove it, and sometimes they can't. I think a lot of times the biggest problem is they can't prove anything, and so people keep trying it because they know some people get away with it. And if it's a big enough entity involved, it could take 10 years for them to figure out who to blame, you know. And they'll make it look like it was, free tonight, tomorrow, Sunday. Okay, DC, we're gonna figure that out. We'll do something this weekend, and I should promote this because they're great friends of mine. Maya and Dr. Tap are doing their 1,000 sub special, which is thanks to DC, by the way. She pushed them right over the limit there to the 1,000 mark and beyond. And I'm gonna see if I can find the note. I posted on a community link, but they are doing a special, and I don't know how that'll work. See, I don't want this to just start playing something on my phone, which is what it tends to do. Okay, I'm gonna do this because if I go to subscriptions and I go to Maya, here she is. Notification on. So it is at 9:30 p.m. Eastern time. And it says it's scheduled for today for the Ask a Science Nerd for the 1st of November, which is today. So I'm assuming that's today. The only thing I want to do is I want Maya to confirm that she didn't mean to set that up as Sunday's show. But I'm assuming she's doing a special show tonight and then doing the regular BSS because she has guests lined up. And I don't want to let a cat too far to the bag, but I have been invited. I've been invited to be a special guest on Bad Science Sunday for the Dr. Tapioca Weasel birthday show, which I can't remember when that is, but it's sometime in November. So I will try to be there for that one. Braylon, are you putting up the one? Yeah, is that the link? There probably is. And DC, I do not have the Nightbot thing, and I'm not good at coming up with this stuff. But I'll figure out a way to start actually shilling the people that I enjoy watching. But basically, if you see somebody in my side chat and I'm interacting with them, a lot of times it means I like watching their stuff. Brainless is on Slim Cyborg's show. And what are you guys doing this show with Pip, the game show today, Brainless? Brainless, if you don't mind putting Pip's link in there. I think Pip's in Scotland or something. So DC, I don't know if this would be your cup of tea or not. I know there's been some talk in DC's chat that I know a lot of good people that do a lot of cool shit. Now, if you're into stuff that's a little bit raunchier, Slim Show is on usually Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And the odd time there'll be a Friday game show. And Slim will post other stuff from his. So the Slim Cyborg is an entertainer. Be rude as fuck on Pip's stream. Yes. So there will be sexual innuendo, to say the least, mixed with rude words and game stuff. And basically, if you're offended by people making lewd references to and about each other, it's not going to be your cup of tea. If you're the kind of person that likes things that are a little rude and a little off kilter, I've always enjoyed that kind of humor. The first time I saw Slim Show, I'm like, oh, I like these people. This is what I like to do. They're saying the things that I think in my brain or sometimes say out loud. So when I was not sick, I was on Slim Show more often than not. And the thing is, when I'm home, my family comes home. But I used to do Slim Show. I used to just call in while I was driving back to the yard or driving home at the end of the day. And I would just chat. And that was fun. All right. So let's see here. Brainless has put that in there. So yeah, so DC might not be your cup of tea. Tsunami's been by. But yeah, things sometimes get out of hand. I know Sumami has been there, and I don't know who else is top still here. It looks like I got more people. I never trust the counter, the view counter, but it's more people here. I've made it to a full freaking hour. Yeah, well, DC, come on by and check it out. If it pisses you off, you don't have to stay. Obviously, it's not everybody's key, and as DC often points out, if this is something that upsets you or offends you or is too much for you, like take care of your mental health and don't hang out and listen. And if I'm saying something that bothers you, you can call me out in the chat about it, but you can also go watch something else. And that's what I've been doing a lot of that with the political climate being what it is. I've been escaping politics a lot, and I do go to DC's channel because I know they won't talk about it. I enjoy having something to think about, but I don't like 24/7 politics, which is what seems to be happening. Every channel I tune into is talking about it, and hell, I've been talking about it too. But yeah, so yeah, the Slim Cyborg show though will often tackle serious topics and silly stuff, and kind of have a laugh about it. And it depends. Some of the shows we really get quite serious about our topics, and the panel is often somewhat one sided, but sometimes we come to blows a little bit. We have 1 weekend until our election. That's all that matters right now. Sumami, you know what? I back you up on that. It's a critical election. I totally understand that. I need a little bit of brain space left over for other stuff. And DC's channel is good for that. It's good for that because we're still talking about serious stuff. Our meaning the US. Yeah, well, and so yeah, the Brainless and I are not US people. Top I know is down there somewhere. DC and Sumami I know are Americans. And I don't know who else is watching. Off the top of my head. I'm bad at thinking and remembering. I'm bad with names in general. But yeah, no, DC, this is right. You preserve and promote your emotional well-being. And if that means paying attention to every little move in the election, absolutely do that too, right? And I know like when it comes to our election, I don't even want to like get into it, but like right now it's just been a lot of sort of oh, maybe that'll push it over the brink. Maybe that'll like a lot of like votes of non-confidence and MPs calling into question the leadership of the current prime minister and their party, and then also like the opposing parties like threatening to and actually taking away support because they don't have a majority. They don't have a full majority. They have the minority. It's a minority government, so they need the propping up of other parties, which is it's a bit of a fucking thing. Although to delve into one part of U.S. politics that I find annoying is the fact that one party will, if they're like almost even, one party will literally fuck the other party over and just put government at a standstill. In terms of making new inroads, that fucking pisses me off about the way American politics goes. I think like after the election's over, people should work together, and the refusal to do so is more fodder for the idea that that the toddler in chief from a few years ago is just trying to get back in so he can have more temper tantrums. But yeah, it's fucking weird. I don't think there's very many people that you could look at as a politician and say there's not a single fucking good thing they ever did. And I guess Trump would fit into that category too. With one important thing is that he provides a lot of fodder for the late night talk shows to make fun of weird shit he does. But yeah, no, it's my politics is a little bit one sided. I am a much more liberal person than I am anything else, but and I guess liberal in terms of like I want people to do well. I don't want to prop up corporations, right? That's not I think people should come long before corporations. Corporations should be a way for people to make a living and a way to provide goods and services to people. They should not take precedence over people's well-being and people's ability to earn a living. And by living, I mean like having food, shelter, security, and time to have a little bit of downtime and fun. I don't know. I don't know if there's a reason we were put on this earth, but I sure as fuck hope it isn't just to work and make some rich fuckers some extra money. That's kind of like my take on it. So, I definitely want to talk to DC about this TikTok tunnel lady. I'm going to talk about her for a minute because it really ties into, this idea of this TikTok lady being like a little nuts, right? And when I say nuts, I guess I'm being offensive to the mentally ill. I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with this lady in particular. Like I don't know what causes her to think she should just do this. But I can't wait to show people, and I think DC and I we'll talk and we'll come up with a way to like present this to my audience and hers, and I think people will enjoy it. It's a bit of fun to watch this lady do her thing. And I think DC, I don't know DC if you still have all the videos or if they're just on TikTok or whatever, but we can talk about that. We don't need a lot of them to show the sort of fuckery. And yeah, facts not fuckery. Well, this TikTok tunnel lady is a lot of fuckery. So I'm gonna talk it up because I'm hoping DC and I will talk about that. And we'll also hopefully DC and I will talk about MLM. And whether we do it in one stream or a couple of streams, hopefully we can come up with something because I think it would be a lot of fun. I really like DC's personality and attitude and the way she talks about stuff and what she brings to people. And it's somewhat lighthearted and fun, but it's also she talks about the serious downfall of people that get into. Oh, that's awesome, DC. The people that get into like these MLM things, which are basically pyramid schemes with a big dress on them, hoping that you won't see that underneath it is a pyramid. It's just weird. Like they put a sheet over it, and the sheet is basically some sort of product or service they sell, mostly a product, or they pretend like there's some really weird ones. There's one Nilo Life you were talking about the other day, and some of this stuff is just absolutely fucking bonkers. There's the one where like you shine this light on yourself and it's supposed to like cure diseases and conditions you have. That's fucking nuts. Yeah, Brainless, big barf. But Brainless, if you come by DC's channel, don't barf. Just have a laugh at it. But it's really late. DC does shows at different times. If you're a member, I think there's some shows that are on in the afternoon, which would be your evening, Brainless. But when it's like 9:30 at night, I think you'd probably be sleeping, Brainless. I don't know. You might be waking up in the morning. Brainless is in the Netherlands. I think you're 4 hours later than me right now. 5 usually. I could be wrong. So this TikTok tunnel lady, not selling a product or anything. It's not an MLM. There's a little bit of a departure for DC, and this is the first time I really. Oh, now it's 5. Normal is 6. Okay, and then it's like yeah, and it's like maybe it's in the UK it's usually 5, and now it's 4. I think that's right. We've been through this before. We have UK friends from Slim's channel too that we talk to, like Pip, for instance, and Dog. All right, so the TikTok tunnel lady. The reason why this is funny is because this woman she's a woman who I don't know how old she is, late 20s, early 30s, maybe. I don't know. She doesn't look like she's like in high school or anything. But she does these TikTok videos about like she decides to do some alterations to her basement. She goes down in there and she's like, well, there's this block wall and the foundation of my basement. I think I'm gonna just cut a doorway through there and work my way through. Anyway, they call her TikTok tunnel lady because she starts digging a tunnel basically. And building a bomb shelter type sort of thing. The interesting thing about the area she's in, and I can't remember where she was. Was she in Maryland or something like that? Anyway, it doesn't really matter what state she's in, but she comes up with some really crazy ideas. And one of the things I wanted to go through with and show DC, because I was talking about stuff, but it is, you know what, Brandis, if she knew what she was doing, it would be cool. But she has no clue what she's doing, so she's a danger to herself and others in a lot of ways. And DC and I'm sure we'll be able to show a few clips of this. I'm sure, like, DC is a very professional producer of stuff. Yeah, she doesn't give a fuck about her neighbors or her tenants and stuff. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about some of that stuff. So, we don't want to spill all the tea, as DC would say, all on the promo. But yeah, I think with my knowledge of like construction techniques and stuff like this, I can tell you a much better way to get this done. Even if you want to do it in secret. Although I'm not gonna suggest people do that, but there are ways to do things like this that make way more sense. Um, she's obsessed with the nuclear fallout. Did she play that Fallout video game? Maybe, I don't know. There's a Fallout TV show. I have nothing to do with it, so and they don't pay me any money. But I started watching the first episode. It looks interesting. I'll probably keep watching it, but I'm watching Doctor Who these days. And once I get back to work, I may go back to not ever watching TV again. When I was working full time, I pretty much never watched a TV show. Now that when I've been sick, it's been almost 3 months since I got sick. It's pretty much. It was the first weekend in August I got sick, and now it's the first weekend in November. So all of August, all of September, all of October. That is 3 fucking months. Colin Furs build a tunnel from his house garage. He's fun. Okay, that sounds good, Brainless. We'll check that out. I'm gonna, you know, what I'm gonna click on it, because if I click on it, then I will. I didn't mean to start it. I just wanted to get it so I'd remember it. All right. So doesn't give a fuck about her neighbors. So this TikTok tunnel lady. One of the things I will give her is that she learns a few tool techniques. But what she doesn't have is a good idea about how to do things that's effective and safe. I never built tunnels, but I know enough about how tunnels are put together that I can tell you there are a number of things that you do to support a building when you're like, I'd say the closest thing I've done is adding foundation space, which is similar to what she's doing. So I have done that. I have taken a building that has foundation A and making it A plus B, if you will. And a tunnel is just like a narrow B that you're adding onto it. And in the case where I've been doing stuff like this, we've been adding foundations to buildings where the building footprint is just going to get larger. Or in one case, what we did was we suspended a building up in the air, like as though we were going to pick it up, put it on a truck and move it, but we just left it suspended, and then we built a new foundation underneath of it because it needed one, because it had not been correctly built. At the risk of I don't want to overdox myself or get into details about specific people's projects, because I don't think that would be fair or reasonable for me to do. But just say that I've been through these processes, and one of the things that you do is you support the structures as you go. So I'll talk about stuff like that with DC as we go along. I'll talk about what should have been done, what would make more sense, and which types of people, which professionals you'd want to talk to. She also does something that I've always, it's been my biggest bugbear, if you will. I don't know if bugbear is a commonly used term, but the thing that just keeps sort of niggling at my brain, I guess, is that it's another weird term I don't often use, but it's something every time I think about her, I'm like, why did she not do this? And that's the use of a conveyor belt to move excavated materials. So I'll get into that. And so when I organize with the DC, what we'll do is I'll find images or videos of these types of equipment in operation, and I'll say I think what I'd like to do, unless DC thinks it's a bad idea, we'll talk about this offline, is hey, what should have been done if this was a project you had approval to do, what should have been done, and then also how would you work on getting approval for this. So then this guy Colin Furs, I'm gonna say Furzy, builds a tunnel from his house to his garage. There's absolutely nothing wrong with having a tunnel, even on private property, if it's properly built. And thank you, DC. Appreciate that you feel that I'm doing better, and I'm glad you love Doctor Who. I'm sure we'll talk about some Doctor Who stuff too. I'm not very far into the newer version of Doctor Who. I watched a lot of the old shows back in the day, and I read the books back in the day. Long ago, I read Doctor Who books. Probably back when I was in elementary school. I don't know if I've read them since. But I love British sci-fi. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Doctor Who, and Red Dwarf are all I'm a big fan of all of those. I'm sure DC and I will have lots to talk about going forward. I also think DC, you're going to do something with my chicken nugget songs. I saw you talking about, and with Halloween, I got distracted from your stream quite a bit yesterday. So I don't know if you talked about it more, but I know you said you were going to do something with it. I'm excited to have that happen and get credit for it. because I like doing creative stuff. Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, no, I'm just excited to see what you come up with from that. I don't know if you're gonna like sound clip bits of it or what, but yeah. Colin Furs. Okay. Hello, Skyworks 600. Welcome. And Skyworks, I don't know where I know you from or if you're just happening upon stumbling on me here, but welcome. So yeah, I'll be checking that out. So yeah, so my bit of a weird background, having been a contractor for nearly 30 years. I built a lot of stuff, tore down a lot of stuff, dug a lot of holes, dug a lot of trenches, and I think I can offer some insight as to what the TikTok tunnel lady should have done, which is stayed in her kitchen and had a cup of tea at the end of her workday. But beyond that, if she was going to go ahead and do this, seen a few atheist streams. All right, Skyworks, probably yes, and I am an atheist. I'm not anti people who are theists. I'm anti people who are controlling people's lives. Um, and I'm not, and I do think the world would be better if we didn't have the craziest of the theists trying to get into politics and government and run everybody. I don't want a theocracy. And anybody that thinks a theocracy would be awesome, I say to them, think about the religion you hate most other than atheism, and tell me how much you want them to decide what you do when you wake up in the morning, and who you sleep with, how you sleep with them, and what you eat. And tell me that would be a great fucking idea. Is Skyworks a Dave? Yeah, Skyworks might be somebody that hangs out with Dave. I don't know. And Dave's streams often happen at a time when I'm tied up, but I try to drop in and listen. Yeah, okay, so probably yeah. So Dave, the captive desk. All right, Skyworks is so. I'm glad to have you here. I don't always talk about religion, but I like when I do, I'm usually not very kind to it. Because usually I'm not talking about religion as a concept. I'm talking about religion as like what specific religious people are doing that's fucking people up, and I hate to have to do that, but it's kind of something that comes up a lot. And I also, you'll often see me. You probably won't be seeing me a whole lot anymore, but over at Brentley's, over at yeah. Thanks for bringing up Dave there, Brainless. Appreciate it. What's that other Chris from Daily Atheist Morning Show? Brentley, the Punk Apostate. Those are great ones. Caroline Desk. I don't know who's Caroline Desk. Don't tell me that Caroline is Dave's wife. I don't know. I have no idea. Um, Caroline Desk. I don't know. Answers in Atheism. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Answers in Atheism. There's a bunch of them. And this SMH is. Have I told you, Samami? I always stumble over what SMH stands for. Anyway, I'm gonna work on winding this all up. I was gonna wind it up like 15 minutes ago, but people are coming in. It's the longer I go, the more people show up. I'm wearing my Optimus Prime shirt, which is I'm a trucker, and Optimus Prime's a truck, so you know, definitely one of my favorite Transformers. I'm also the right age for Transformers to have been like the hottest thing in the world when I was a kid. Um, is it shake my head, smack my head, shit my hum? I don't know what the fuck would it be. I don't know what it's. I shake my head or something, right? You gonna go listen to Megan? All right, go listen to Megan, Sumami. All right, well, everybody. I love people coming by. I love having a chat with everybody. I know. I know that we're coming to the end of a long week, coming off of Halloween. Shit your breeches. Okay. I don't want to shit my breeches, and I tell you, because of the equine nature of activities that go on around my home, shitting in your breeches is not something you want to do. Although horse shit on your breeches has happened. Oh, breeches is different than breeches, right? Breeches like your gitch or your underwear, and because breeches is a type of pant you wear for riding. I actually have motorcycle breeches, and my daughter who does horse riding shit because fuck, I married into an equine family. I've mentioned that enough times, right? Horseback riding is like just something that happens. My in-laws make their money from horses, and so horses are just around all the time. But yeah, my father-in-law made horse equipment. That was his trade. Um, Breeches. Um, Well, breeches are a particular type of pant, Sumami, and it's pronounced breeches. But breeches, I don't know, maybe it's the same thing. But yeah, horses are cool, Braylon. You know what, living in a rural area and being around livestock and stuff all the time, it's kind of a normal thing around here that people ride horses in the same way that other people might, I don't fucking know, play other sports and stuff. It's something that's hugely accessible here. People come in from cities and stuff, but like, for us to go to a horseback riding facility, I mean, technically we could ride a horse out of our own backyard if we wanted to, and we're not going to. But yeah, it's less than 12 minutes. Tomato. Yeah, but I see breeches is what we say. I don't know if I don't think it's a Canadian pronunciation. In this case, it might be a regional pronunciation though. And I think Sumami and Brainless and I all probably pronounce things much differently. Um, and yeah, Skyworks, I don't know what your regional area is or what sort of dialect or accent you speak, but I do want to thank people for coming by. I do want to say, if you are around horses, make sure you don't get kicked in the head. Oh, your sister-in-law has just, yeah. So DC, my wife was a 3-day eventer. And my daughter is a like hunter jumper rider. But she got injured a couple of years ago, and her horse was injured earlier this year, so she's been just taking it easy. But they're doing it. You go with breeches, okay? So in the type of riding my daughter does is what they call English riding, and they say breeches. So it's interesting. You're in the UK and you say breeches. So that's interesting. And I don't know if we're talking. I think we're talking about the same thing, but they're like sort of weird tight pants with grips on them. So they have grips sort of in the seat and along the inside of the thigh that help you hold on to the saddle. And the ones I have for motorcycle riding don't have the grippy stuff on them, but they have the same slim fit, so you don't get like caught in the chains and stuff on a. So you don't have like a pant leg like that would get caught in your chain or the workings of your motorcycle. And they also have padding and thickness to the material so that if you were to fall off in an accident, they protect you from abrasions and stuff. But I don't wear them all the time. I find them a little uncomfortable. I wear like over these other pants to go over my sort of regular walk around pants. Where do you live? Horses, lawnmowers, or motor transportation after many DUIs? Yeah, well, there you go, top tester. Yeah, I can see that happening. Around here, one of the things you don't see it in the country here, but you do see a lot of people on in towns. You'll see people on these little like electric motorcycles, and you're like, they have pedals on them. Um, so they have like the fairings and stuff from like a street bike, and then they have pedals on them, and that's how you know. And they go really slow. They have like a top speed of I think 35 or 40 kilometers an hour. But you know what? If all you got to do is get down to the other end of town, which is like you could walk it in 15 minutes, you can ride on that thing and be there in 3. So the towns I live near are very small, and I live in between 2 towns basically. So I don't live in town. It would be a bit of a haul to walk to anywhere. I've done it. I've walked to one of the towns. I think it took me 2 hours round trip. It was when my son was young enough to push in a stroller, so it's been a while. But yeah, I do other walking up and down the roads here. But you know what? Speaking of DUIs, there's way too many things. Finish your workout, DC. Good to see you. We'll catch up soon. I want to thank everybody for coming by again. It takes me like 10 minutes to say goodbye because people say things and I just won't shut up. But yeah, I mean, this will be probably one of my last kicks at this can. I'm gonna get ready soon and head down to where I work and work on my truck and get ready. The Appalachian Mountains of Southeast Tennessee. Oh yeah, nothing is close enough to walk to. Yeah, well, see, that's like I could walk to it, but it would take me so much of the day to do the walk. It wouldn't be worth it. So just hopping in my truck or hopping on my bike makes way more sense for me. And I am a big fan of motorcycles too. So don't get me started on motorcycles or we'll be in big trouble. Thank you, everyone.